It's Sarah. Did not want to be back. I did not want to be back, but I'm back. To talk about flares because this is fun. So today I'm going to be talking about not the liver. Good news, liver's still healthy. As far as we know, no change. But I'm back to talk about microscopic colitis. And I realize some of you may just be on the channel for the autoimmune hepatitis content. So that is not what I'm going to be talking about today. But again, I'm in the middle of what we think is a microscopic colitis flare. If you go way, way back in the channel, I've got other videos about microscopic colitis. So if you're a liver person, like say if this is interesting to you, although many people who have an autoimmune disease develop another one. So someday this may be you. So today I'm going to just like briefly talk about what is microscopic colitis in case you're new to the channel. Where am I with the microscopic colitis and flares? Why? Ugh, why? It's like one thing is healthy and then the other part of my body is like, okay, let's try this for funsies. I've got all my notes because I'm me. As a reminder, I'm a lady talking to a phone. I'm not a medical professional. I can't even talk, evidently. I'm not a medical professional. I'm not a dietitian. I'm not any of those things. I'm a lady talking to a phone. Talk to your doctor to get medical advice for you. This is just me telling my story. And I'll continue doing this because it can feel really lonely when you have some of these diseases. And if you think a liver disease is lonely, think about what it's like to have a disease whose first symptom is watery diarrhea. You can imagine how not fun it is to talk about poop. And I'm not going to talk a lot about poop. But it's a thing. It's a thing. May also happens to be Colorectal Cancer Awareness Month. So all the better to talk and like destigmatize chronic diseases. So what is microscopic colitis? Microscopic colitis is a form of inflammatory bowel disease, IBD, which is the more serious like cousin family of diseases to IBS. You might know IBD, things like colitis, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease. Microscopic colitis is in that same family, but tends to be less severe and tends to not lead to all of the same complications. But it is an autoimmune disorder. And what happens is that it relates to inflammation of the large intestine or the colon. There are two main subtypes, collagenous and lymphocytic. I have lymphocytic microscopic colitis. So that is the disease that I have. Microscopic colitis and some of these diseases tend to be underdiagnosed. I would say diseases of the bowel in general tend to be diagnosed because there's so much stigma about talking about it. Microscopic colitis is a tricky one because it doesn't have some of the same symptoms and the severity of symptoms can be less, so it can be missed. It's called microscopic colitis because unlike the other forms of IBD, it's not visible to the scope or the human eye. They have to take a biopsy of the colon and look at under a microscope, microscopic colitis, to see that you have this disease. So briefly, my history with the disease, I became what I thought I had food poisoning in July 2020. It just didn't resolve. The symptoms went on and on and on and on and on. And after different studies and tests, they couldn't figure out what was happening. I got a colonoscopy in November 2020, and that's when I was diagnosed with microscopic colitis. And it was it's not comfortable when you realize you have something going on in the colon. But we had an answer, and I started budesonide, which is, my liver friends know this, also a common prednisone or budesonide steroids used for autoimmune hepatitis. Budesonide did not work for me. It suppressed the disease, sort of, but I also gained like 30, 35 pounds, and my cholesterol went through the roof and all these other things. So there was a long road to figure out what to do with that. About a year after diagnosis, we started the treatment that I'm currently doing, which is mesalamine, or Lialda is the prescription name. So it's a common medication for people with different forms of IBD. And that has helped me stay relatively healthy throughout. And I also take a medication called hyoscyamine, and that reduces smooth muscle cramping. So for people like me who have microscopic colitis, and we also think IBS, but whatever, just to help the digestive system take it down a level. So, when managed, microscopic colitis is fine. It does mean for me, again, making sure I stay current on my medication and making sure that I'm eating relatively well. If you've been following my channel for a while, you know all the weird medical diets that I've tried. But by and large, eating relatively low FODMAP, reducing the amount of alcohol, fried foods, things like that. I eat pretty healthy, and there's also a lot of overlap with how to eat for this guy. So yeah, it was relatively well maintained until a couple months ago, and it was about the time that I um, shared my update about the liver. I was just a few weeks into just general dysbiosis of the gut. Um, just starting to feel crummy. And these are things like feeling bloated, changes in bowel habits, um, and then it just kept getting worse. And we're in what I would call a flare. So for an autoimmune disorder, when I say flare, that tends to mean that you have some sort of steady state of symptoms, maybe the levels of things that you're measuring in your blood for things like a liver enzyme. And then for some reason, it changes and it gets worse. And it's hard to figure out why. And this is a public service announcement that I'm going to share, courtesy of my husband. It is not your fault. It is not your fault if you have an autoimmune disorder. It is not your fault if you have an autoimmune disorder and you have a flare. A lot of it's just freaking random. And as soon as I got into this flare, whew, I just felt the emotion of it. As soon as I got into this flare, I thought, what did I do? What was the thing that I did that caused this? And we don't, A of all, I don't think we can know. But second of all, it's not helpful. Chronic illnesses just wax and wane. When I look back, I was trying to analyze that and I thought, but my fitness was the same. I was sticking to my meditation. Sleep is an ongoing up and down for me, but nothing was different. And yeah, I had a little bit of work stress, but it wasn't, too extreme, when this started a couple months ago. Um, I think it's dangerous to see all of the information on the internet that's saying, well, if you just were vegan or if you just did these behavioral things. That's not how chronic illness works. And especially with autoimmunity, there's so many things we don't understand. And yes, maybe I could have a week or two earlier noticed some of the symptoms and thought, oh, this could be a flare. That doesn't mean I could have stopped the flare. That didn't mean because I ate like half a box of crackers that I caused this in myself. So I don't want you hating on yourself or hating on anyone else. Autoimmune diseases are going to autoimmune disease, and that's what it is. So now that I've done my public service announcement, what the heck do you do with it? So for me, like, what is a flare? That means really going back to what it felt like to have unmanaged microscopic colitis. So these are like urgent bowel movements 6 to 8 times a day, very unpredictable. And the urgency is scary. It's super scary. And so then I do what a lot of people with a disease like this do is you just don't leave the house because you're like, what am I supposed to do if I can't find a bathroom in, like, sometimes it's minutes. A couple minutes is all I have when I'm in full flare. It's just like disgusting, gross, watery diarrhea. It's awful. That in and of itself is not awful. I guess the way that I explain this to people who don't have like a bowel disease, which is like, imagine you had food poisoning for 2 months. I'm in month 2 of food poisoning. I'm not vomiting, so that's good. Like, but just everything stomach down is food poisoning. So so it's like change in stool frequency and urgency and consistency. And some of those things don't matter, but it's the urgency that's really a problem. It's the distension and the bloating. So for a while, I mean, I looked 6 months pregnant by the time of the end of the day. Like this feeling of fullness and then having abdominal pain. So after about a month of this, I, was doing all of the things that I do to try to manage it for myself. And it was just like, this is not working. This is full on flare. Sometimes you hope, okay, maybe it was just something I ate and my body is slower to recover, When I got food poisoning twice last year, it just took longer. But I know the protocol, so I was working the protocol. Like, here's what I should eat. Didn't make a damn bit of difference. Just like drinking so much water. Water's not going to solve it. I'm not dehydrated. So reach out to my gastro and um, decided to prescribe me a course of Xifaxan. Xifaxan is an antibiotic. It's a very expensive antibiotic. And what makes it kind of like, I don't want to say special, is that it stays within the gastrointestinal tract. And this could be related to a pathogen. This also, and I'll have to do another thing on SIBO, like what a nightmare. It felt a little bit like SIBO and dysbiosis. SIBO definitely causes dysbiosis. Um, it could be IBS. So Xifaxan can be used to treat something like IBS, sometimes microscopic colitis, sometimes SIBO. So we thought, what the hell? So I did 2 weeks of Xifaxan, started doing Citrusol fiber supplement, a lot of you might know and love, with this great orange flavor. And then the biggest thing was I went into my super restrictive diet. And that is a low FODMAP SIBO specific diet. Again, this is like a medical diet, and this is the most restrictive. So that means it's, if you're familiar with FODMAP, low FODMAP, it looks at fermentable sugars that are hard in the gut. And SIBO specific is an additional set of things that may cause bacterial overgrowth or continue to sustain bacterial overgrowth. So for my friends and family who know that I already eat a restricted diet, this is next level. This is next level. And what you're trying to do when you eat like this is to reduce any extra strain or inflammation on the gut. So it's low fiber, it's low residue. I'm eating basically as much pure protein as I can, low carbohydrate cooked vegetables. Um, so like cooked carrots, cooked I can't remember if it's rutabagas or turnips, cooked squash, all of these things in moderate quantities. Um, and then like some nut butters and some, it's a very limited diet. It is not fun. I am not perfect at it. I'm not going to go down that path. For me, like disordered eating is never far out of sight when I get on these like medical diets. And it has done nothing. It's done absolutely nothing. Maybe it's made it better than what it would have been, but like eating this way hasn't changed anything. And I also have been taking Imodium, which is over the counter, to try to like slow bowel movements. Nothing has changed. So I am now, gosh, almost 8 weeks into this. And now we're getting to the point where it's getting worse. So like the abdominal cramping. I'm pretty good with pain. And these are like from before, like doubling over in pain. Like that's how much the abdominal cramping is, and nothing. Tylenol doesn't do it. Like any of the Bentyl or the anti-cramping medications I'm already take hyoscyamine, it's doing nothing. Or it's not helping this, I would say. And now I'm at this point where I also just, I'm not hungry. I am not hungry. So I force myself to eat, not force, that's was dramatic. I try to eat like 3 meals a day. And if you have dysbiosis or something like microscopic colitis, another thing that you can do is you space your meals out. So you have to stop grazing. I'm a grazer naturally. Eat a meal 3 to 4 hours, eat a meal 3 to 4 hours, eat a meal, stop. So I've lost 10 pounds this month because I'm not hungry. My body's not absorbing enough nutrients, and everything is moving through my body too fast. So I'm pretty freaking bummed, and I'm bummed because it has really put a cramp on my life. And that's why I'm talking about it, because it just really sucks. It really sucks when you're thinking about, well, can I go to that thing, and how long will it take to get to that thing, and what if like the pain starts or like symptoms start and I can't find a bathroom. And some of those things are horrifying to me, to think about like what would happen if that wasn't the case. Being really careful about what I'm eating. I have a little update on that, but that just puts a lot of things. I mean, I'm off gluten again. I'm just off like most raw vegetables. So it freaking sucks. And it makes me really sad because this has been a really tough year in a lot of ways, which I'm not going to talk about. Um, Today it's a different, not related to health, just other stuff. My husband and I had planned this big trip to Norway next month. I've really been wanting to do this. Was going to be this road trip to go like way up north, and we made the decision to cancel it um, because we're coming up on a month until, which we'll lose like basically any money that we're going to get back. And I don't have enough confidence that I'm going to be healthy enough. And I don't want to, like, thinking about doing a vacation this way with not being able to, like, choosing to reduce the strain on my digestion, which means not eating and enjoying things. It means like we're taking a road trip and having all of this pain, and it's just going to be miserable. And then you add just the anxiety that it brings you when you're in this state. And it's like, I don't want to take a trip like that. So it got to the point that we canceled something I was really looking forward to. And I know you're saying, okay, Sarah, sorry, like small, sad violin, but it's really isolating when you get in these places because you're trying to focus on yourself and your health and trying to just like find safety. There's nothing more that I want to do than like travel and keep seeing the world. And it's just it's so hard. It's not a good time. I mean, I work a hybrid schedule with my job. I'm not really going into the office. I'm going to try to start like going back in a little bit more, but that means just like from a food perspective, that's hard. Um, just the idea of having some sort of like accident at work feels humiliating to me. Um, there's just like so much stigma around this. Hopefully you can tell that this is hard to talk about. I've probably talked more in detail about this and I'm not even in full detail. So I felt really discouraged. I have an appointment with my gastroenterologist, Dr. B, in June for my annual checkup, and it's just not getting better. And I was really discouraged because I connected with one of the nurses today, and I tried to connect last week, missed her call. Now it's Monday, and she basically was calling me back to say, I don't have any notes for you and I can't bump you appointment wise. And I was so discouraged. I'm so thankful because I found out that my gastroenterology practice has a new like on demand service with their nurse practitioners. And so, oh my gosh, the guy that I met with was incredible. He was so kind. He really listened. And so now that all of these interventions haven't worked, now we go into the next set. And I'm not happy about it, but at least we know what we're doing. So doing all the new stuff I'm going to try because this isn't working. So, going to go get a ton of tests. So like stool tests and blood tests, everything from pancreatic insufficiency, to thyroid, to just like it's very unlikely to have something parasitic or something like that. We have to rule it out to say like, that's a whole nother thing. We're not going to talk about that today, but that's another thing. Doing all these labs, some of them self-service, a lot of fun. So that's like step one is to get all of that out of the way. Then another treatment that I had heard about but had not done was taking prophylactically, one of those, taking Imodium. So basically the maximum dose of Imodium. So it's 8 pills a day, 4 in the morning, 4 at night, and trying that for a few weeks to see if that will slow my body down. And he said, well, you could become really constipated. And I was like, that would be great. I would love that. I imagine if people have another form of IBD or IBS where they're constipated all the time, they'll say, Sarah, that's terrible. I will take a different terrible until we can figure this out. So that's one. First thing we're going to try for 2 weeks. Then we're going back to my fun friend. If you've been with me this whole time, cholestyramine. Cholestyramine is coming back. And that is a medication that in theory is for bile acid malabsorption, which can really irritate the gut. So if your bile is not being properly absorbed, mainly in the small intestine, that could be causing the inflammation and just that your colon is like, get out. Like it's so irritated and the tissue is so inflamed. So cholestyramine is a bile acid binder that you take and it like sucks up all the extra bile acid so that you can rather than being absorbed as bile, that it'll just like pass through the digestive tract and you'll like eliminate it. but without what's happening to me now. That did not work for me before. I don't care. I will try it again. It's also one of those weird, we'll see if we get there. There are these powdered packets that you take with juice. It's really weird. If it works, I will do it for the rest of my life. Like anyone with chronic illness knows at some point you're just like, make it stop. What is it going to take? So that's about 4 weeks of things to try. 2 weeks about of the Imodium. That doesn't work. Try the cholestyramine. And then the nurse practitioner's view, and we'll see if Dr. B concurs as another colonoscopy. Good news is that food doesn't stay in my body, so prep's going to be easy. But maybe another colonoscopy. And this is a reminder that if you're 45 or older, you need to get a colonoscopy. And if you have symptoms, especially like pain or blood in your stool, you definitely need to get a colonoscopy. If I end up getting a colonoscopy, I'll do a tips and tricks video for colonoscopy prep because it is a thing, but you will be fine. You will be absolutely fine. I am glad that I'm here to make this update. So if you have IBD, whether it's microscopic colitis, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's, I see you. It is tough and it can feel extra tough because these are the types of things that we might not want to talk about. But I am telling you that it is not your fault that you have this disease. It is not your fault if you're in a flare, but that you need to take care of yourself and to find somebody who can help you get better. So thanks for listening. I'm hoping in the next week or two I can come back with some better updates. If there are other things you want me to talk about related to the microscopic colitis, I'm happy to do so. I'll put a link to the whole playlist in the video description so you can go back and see. I mean, look at the picture of me from my first video. That was me 35 pounds, maybe even more than I weigh now. That's what steroids did to my body. So this stuff is like, it's super serious. It's not fun. But if you have specific other questions about microscopic colitis, or there are topics that you want me to cover around microscopic colitis, IBS, SIBO, and my experiences with them, just to lay you the phone, I'm happy to do that. So I am wishing that you are safe and well, and I hope to come back with a better update. Because again, if you can tell, it's starting to get sunny in Seattle. I want to be out doing things and enjoying life and not wondering where is the nearest bathroom to where I am. So thanks for listening, everybody, and hope to be back soon. Bye.